Hi, my name is Maggie, and today I'm going to be talking about the first chapter of the Bible, which is Genesis. And I kind of describe Genesis 1 through 11 as the creation of all things good and the destruction of sin. And so, just kind of as a side note, I'm going back to Genesis because one of my coaches recently got me this Bible, and it is a coach's Bible, and it's just really special to me because that might be what I'm planning on doing. But because this Bible is just really special to me, I decided that I kind of wanted to start making notes and highlights in this Bible from the very beginning. But as I started to get to read Genesis for, I don't even know, maybe like the 10th time, I really picked up on some stuff that really spoke to me this time. And so I'm not really going to go through every single chapter, but for Genesis 1 through 11, I'm just going to kind of point out a few things that really stood out to me this time, and then I really want to talk about Genesis 11 because it's something that I didn't really understand until reading it and kind of praying about it and meditating on it this time through. So the first thing that I want to talk about is Genesis 1, and this is basically when God creates everything. And what I noticed and kind of highlighted was after God describes everything, he says, "It was good, it was good, it was good," over and over. And then he also goes on to say in Genesis 1:27, "So God created human beings in his own image, in the image of God he created them." And so I wanted to note this because, God created everything from the stars, the sky, earth, to humans, and each thing that he created, he described it as being good. And I wanted to talk about this because oftentimes when we start to compare ourselves to other people or we start to value ourselves based on worldly standards, it's not always the easiest to feel that self-love for ourselves. But God, the creator of everything, looks at you through your best days and your worst days, and he describes you as a good creation. And along with that, he goes on to say that you were literally created in his image. And so the first kind of point that I want to make is it's very easy to see God's beauty in sunsets and in everyone around you. But I think that we should all challenge ourselves to also find that beauty inside ourselves and know that we are beautiful and we are worth it because God created us and he created us to be good and he created us to be in his image himself. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is the story of Adam and Eve. I think most people have heard or read about this story, but if you don't know, it's basically the first sin committed in the Bible. And kind of what I wanted to note on this story is Adam and Eve literally had everything that they needed to be happy and to live a good life. And, God had given them all the plants and all the animals and each other and just everything that they needed to survive and to, basically thrive with him. And then this serpent comes along and convinced Eve that she needed more and that she needed to do the one thing that God told her that she couldn't have. And so for me, I think that this was kind of symbolic of living this righteous life with God when he continually provides and takes care of his people. And then we see, sin and greed and temptation. And sometimes we give into those things because we think that we need those in order to be happy or to be more successful, while in reality, God is the only one who can bring you those things. And through God, we have everything that we need. But going back to the sin, the verse that I really pointed out was Genesis 3:6, and it says, "The woman was convinced. She saw that the tree was beautiful and its fruit looked delicious, and she wanted the wisdom." And so I highlighted the whole verse and then I circled "she wanted" because when we give in to sin and we give in to temptation, it's because it's coming from our own personal desires and not from us trying to give the glory to God or to do things for God's action. It's because we want them or, we think we need them when really we just need God and his love to provide and carry us through everything. And along with that, in Genesis 4:7, this is the story of Cain and Abel when Cain actually goes on to kill his brother because he's jealous of him and jealous of the way that he gets to live his life and gets to sacrifice things to God. And then God says in Genesis 4:7, "You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, but you must subdue it and be its master." So this kind of goes back to Genesis 1 when I was talking about how God made each person good in their own way. And so you don't need to try and do other things or prove yourself in other ways. You just do what is right for God. And through that, you'll be living a righteous life that isn't, controlled by sin. Instead, you'll be able to notice the sin and temptation around you and be able to say no to that and yes to God. And the next story that I kind of want to talk about is the story of Noah, which most people know, so I'm not going to go in big detail of that. But the one thing that I did want to point out about the story is over and over it says that Noah did just as God had commanded him. And so I wanted to talk about this because God chose to save, one family from this whole thing. He sent the flood for everyone else but this one family. And it was because Noah had found favor in God's eyes and he didn't question him and he didn't, wait to act on what God put on his heart. Because I think sometimes today, God places something in our heart and our mind and we don't think that we're ready or we don't really want to do it right now. We want to wait until we're more successful or we're stronger or we're smarter or any of these things, and so we decide to wait. But here Noah was, literally following every single instruction that God had laid out with him without question. And because of that, God saved Noah and he blessed Noah and he just did all these amazing things for Noah because Noah, put his worldly identity aside and picked up the cross and followed God through everything without question, no matter what. And then the last story that I want to talk about is in Genesis 11, and this was something that I just kind of skimmed through Genesis the first couple times that I read it, but this last time reading through, it really stood out to me, and I really started wondering, what does this really mean? Because when I read it the first time, it was kind of confusing. But basically, this is talking about the Tower of Babel, and basically, these people are trying to build this great city and this tower up really high. And so I'll start in Genesis 11:4, and it says, "Then they said, 'Come, let's build a great city for ourselves, with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world.' But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower that people were building. 'Look,' he said, 'the people are united, and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them.'" And so I read this the first time, and I was confused because I was like, why is God, not uniting his people? Why is he upset that they're doing something together, they're building this great tower? Why is that upset to him? But then I went back to the original passage in Genesis 11:4, and it says, "Then they said, 'Come, let us build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world.'" And so this is kind of symbolic of pride and worldly treasures because they're just doing this to get famous and to do this for themselves, right? Never in there does it say anything about God. It's only about them and them becoming famous and them building this great tower for themselves. And so God, when he says nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them, he's not saying that he wants to put limits on godly people. He's saying that he wants to put limits on the rebellion against God. He understands that everyone needs him, and so he doesn't want these people that aren't doing things in God's glory and are only doing the things to achieve glory for themselves to let their pride and their ego become so high, because nothing that you do out of glory for yourself will ever stand as strong as what you do for the glory of God. And so that's kind of what I have for Genesis 1 through 11. And so just kind of the reminders from this are, every single day you're created in God's image. And through that, you are created good and you're created strong and you're created powerful and you're called to live a life that means all those things and impacts other people in that way. And also, everywhere you go, there's going to be sin and temptation. And it has to be your decision to choose if you're going to continue to live for God or if you're going to continue to give in to those sin and those temptations. And lastly, just kind of know that God's going to continue to place things on your heart and your mind. And it's important that as Christians, we don't think about what we don't know and what we don't have, but we allow God to use us right now where we are with what we do know and what we do have, and that we continue to do those things for God and continue to seek His kingdom and to give all the glory to Him and to not be living or doing things for prideful reasons. Thank you.